Let's go over a quick outline for the video. We're going to first look at some jack high flops. Then we're going to continue the fun and look at some 10 high flops. Then we're going to discuss 8 high and lower boards and how to play them in general. Then we'll randomly generate some flops and quickly visualize our range. I'll also generate the turn in the river, since I know I don't do that as much as I probably should, so don't worry, we'll talk about turns and rivers. And spoiler alert, poker gets repetitive in general, and I'm going to repeat a lot of what I've already said today. So the same methodology we sort of used on the ace and the king high boards, seeing how many nut type hands we had, how our equity changes on different flop textures, we're going to be doing a lot of that today. So that's not a bad thing. Poker does get very repetitive, especially once you start to understand stuff. And just be aware that the same methodology we used in the last video, we're going to use today, especially looking at the jack and 10 high boards. Jack high flops. Let's look at a jack of hearts, 6 of clubs, 3 of clubs board. Note the 3-betting range has 54.4% equity here, so it's pretty standard really. So let's shrink that so you guys can see it. But I have the range plugged into Flopzilla and Equilab, and you can see that the 3-betting range, which is right here, has 54.42% equity, and then the 3-bet calling range has 55.6% equity. So that seems very normal. That's very close to how much equity the ranges had pre-flop, like amazingly close. So nothing too shocking there. And then if you want, you can pause the screen and look at this range right here and how often it has certain types of hands, as well as this range right here. But we're going to talk about it right now. So the key thing, of course, is not all equity is created equally. So I started out with counting the combos. So for the nuts, we had aces and queens and pocket jacks, which made up 21 combos total. Remember, we're not 3-betting ace jack off in button versus cutoff, so we don't have any top pair, top kicker. So the nuts are these hands right here. And then the pretty good stuff we had is king jack offsuit in pocket tens. So these are hands that aren't strong enough to bet all 3 streets for value, which I'll talk about in just a moment, but they're still pretty good hands. They can get 1 or 2 streets of value. So que bueno, if we aren't 3-betting jack X suited stuff, it really helps to 3-bet king jack off or queen jack off. So that's something else that I noticed when I was just playing around with the combos a bit, which is I think most people really like 3-betting at least suited aces, and if you're like me, you like 3-betting some suited kings as well. There aren't really any suited jacks I want to 3-bet bluff. I guess we could 3-bet like jack 8 or jack 9 suited or jack 7 suited, but I don't really like them very much. So because we're not 3-betting any suited jacks, it helps that we 3-bet these offsuit jacks to put some medium strength hands in our range. So now because we have the king jack off in our 3-betting range, we're doing still pretty well on jack high flops. After we've checked back, we can still have some good but not great hands. All right, so some immediate stuff to note. I imagine most people got that, but let me rephrase that because I think I can explain it a little bit better. All I'm saying is, after we 3-bet preflop, we're never going to have that pure nuts or pure air range that would be the perfect, easiest to play range. And because of that, because we aren't ever going to have pure nuts or pure air, it does help when we have some medium strength hands that, can check back on the flop and comfortably call our opponent's turn or river bets. It also helps to have some hands that can bet on the flop for value, then check back and call a river bet. So I like having these medium strength hands in our range, and I like the fact that we have king jack off because it gave us more medium strength hands. Whereas if we didn't have any, sort of not great jacks, then we'd only have the 6 combos of pocket tens, which isn't very many medium strength hands. Some stuff to note along those lines. Since the high card is getting lower, we're having less meh pairs just by the nature of the board texture. In other words, on an ace XX board, we had a ton of middle pairs, like kings to tens, which could arguably be checked back, but we have fewer middle pairs on a jack high board. We actually have more nut type hands on a jack high board than we did on an A high board since we have so many overpairs. I would really pause for a moment and let this sink in, because this is one of those things where if someone would have explained it to me 3 months ago, I'd be like, oh yeah, that makes sense, but I wouldn't have fully realized it because I had never thought about it and I had never looked at it on my own. So really make sure this sinks in. What I'm saying is after we 3-bet, if the board comes one very, very, very high card, like an ace, we actually don't have that many awesome hands, especially when we weren't 3-betting ace queen off. Because, on an ace high board, the awesome hands are like pocket aces and ace king. And then the ace queen suited or whatever ace queen off hands we can have. Whereas if the board's lower, like if the board's jack high, it gives us a lot more overpair combos like aces, kings, and queens. So because of that, as the board texture gets higher, you actually have more medium strength hands. Like on the Ace XX board, we had King Cid 10, which were medium strength, and Ace X Pseudo, which were medium strength. Whereas on the lower boards, we're not going to have that many hands like that. And you'll see that in the 10 high boards as well.